from November 8th of 1982, there is a visiting lecturer, a 3-hour lecture on rock music exposed, where he talks about the satanic messages in music, and in particular backmasking, where things are played backwards. Like a satanic message or a dark message will be revealed to your children. Goes on article to talk about, particular bands like AC/DC and Kiss, pointing to things like tarot cards and other things satanic. March 10th of 1990, it's parents that are grieving for their son. They want a probe into the suicides. There's a picture of him in the paper and his descent into hanging out with kids that they didn't know the last names of, and kids that were more of a criminal element. And there's also a photo in the article of the drugs that were found. At his funeral, he requested to have Metallica played. What's interesting is that this is like the front page of the Herald, drawing a correlation between this suicide and the ones previous. It's pointing to the satanic element as being the influence of the suicide. On March 12th of 1990, parents group wants the police to take more action in the occult deaths, pointing to the city as a location for occult activity. They called the mayor, requested a meeting. They also demand more police involved, and they are convinced that adults are coercing teenagers into killing themselves, and the parents are insisting that their children were not suicidal. This parents group wants the house on the 1000th block of 6th Avenue to be shut down. But on the Friday before, some of the parents storm the house at midnight. They look in the closets and they find a few things. They find a skeleton banner and some rope, and they find a clay sculpture of a devil's head with blood. The police are called to escort the two men out of the house, which they just stormed into at midnight for no reason, or what they thought was a reason. They leave for the night, and they claim that there is 20 to 25 kids in the house between the ages of 8 to 21 years old, and that the children are being forced to sleep on the floor on sheets, and that there's rotten food in the fridge. And even though these men leave, they come back at 2 in the morning and are like, oh, the house was filled with kids. And so the police inform the parents group that they can't just shut down houses. The parents group, from one interview, they say, there's a God in heaven and there is a Satan, but these kids need prayer. And the police say this occult activity is happening all over the country, and they've sent their staff for additional training. March 12th of 1990, talking about the signs of occult, how to notice them in your kid. Many city officials attended a 2-day workshop. It's one quote from them, one of the attendees of the workshop, who's like, before I attended the workshop, I wasn't quite certain, but now I know. I know there's satanic influence in the community, and that usually satanic influence is going to be for 9 to 17-year-old kids. Identify the difference between a self-styled and a traditional Satanist. So a self-styled Satanist would be young kids who are just into heavy metal, and traditional Satanists are the ones who are influencing the minds of young people and follow the teachings of the Satanic Bible. Self-styled kids are putting themselves at risk to being influenced by the traditional Satanists. Warnings to parents, they said that you should look out for changes in behavior. And Lethbridge has no satanic crimes have come to light, but they're taking it very seriously. If someone is found to be coercing kids into committing suicide, then they would be criminally charged. But that's not saying that there's any evidence for that. Then they go on to talk about satanic symbols. 666 is the mark of the beast, goat's head, the letter F is the 6th letter of the alphabet, the peace symbol is the cross of Nero or a broken crucifix. Their beliefs are everything that is bad is good, and everything that is good is bad, and words written backwards. Natus, Nema, Red Rum, and Anarchy for violence and destruction. And the circle is a magical circle. And the Star of David is having a magical properties for having 6 points. The Ouroboros, the snake that eats its tail, is for sacrifice. 2 lightning bolts, like the SS, is for power over other people. And the swastika is the broken cross. Triangle is a powerful symbol, and if it has an eye in it, it is the eye of Satan. And they go on to things for parents to look out for. Listening to heavy metal music, satanic literature, Ouija boards, Dungeons and Dragons, video games with satanic themes, and satanic toys, Freddy dolls, Temple of Doom, types of kids that are at risk. Any kid with a talent of art, kid with a sense of humor that turns to cruel, drugs and alcohol use, vandalism, tattooing, and self-mutilation. Is all signs that your kid could be under satanic influence. So a lot of things that kids would be doing, like experimenting with drugs and alcohol, or experimenting with music, experimenting with their identity, is all quickly categorized as Satanist, when there isn't, as they even say in the article, there isn't any evidence of this actually being here. It's all just based on suspicion and rumor. March 15th of 1990. The mothers of 2 14-year-old boys believe their sons have coerced into committing suicide, and that the suicides are promoting occult activity amongst city teens. But there's a real fear that people are threatening to burn down houses. I feel like I'm in the middle of one of those satanic witch hunt movies. There's also parents who believe that the boys are so grief-stricken that they can't believe their sons would commit suicide. People believe it might just be a hysteria. The police are actively investigating at the request of parents who believe their kids committed suicide due to a satanic pact or being influenced by adults. There is at least 11 teenagers who say that they are connected to occult activity in the city, and 8 of them are in counseling. They're saying that some of the victims had satanic literature with them, and were also listening to the band Metallica. And the parents have some fear that the teen suicides legitimize suicide and make it seem more accessible to other kids. March 15th of 1990, there is a small article on the rush of literature at the Christian bookstore. So their claim is that there's more people coming in to buy Christian books due to the recent string of suicides in Lethbridge and a desire to protect their children. July 19th, 1991. The parents, a year and a half after, want the investigation reopened. They want the provincial ombudsman to intervene, reopen the cases, because they don't believe them to be suicides. They believe them to be coerced suicides. They want the police to reinvestigate. They believe that there's evidence that they were involved in the occult, coerced into suicide by an adult in the community. March 20th of 1992 is interesting. A man who's angry that the media is being accused of media sensationalism, that they might be over-sensationalizing the news to sell papers, but also saying that that's not bad for the media to do. Is it okay for them to sensationalize to sell papers? or is it media integrity? He doesn't go into it, but I think that's sort of what he's dancing around. The Satanic Panic era and a murder in Alexander Wilderness Park that was one of the suicides, his stepfather. Now, it's connected loosely, but there is, like, right in the middle of it is one of the most vocal for the mother of the son is the most vocal towards the Satanic Panic or the satanic theory of her son's death. But her boyfriend is also murdered outside of the outskirts of the city within the same period of time. The article is talking about how the news isn't sensationalizing it as an argument. The media shouldn't be to blame because they had a lack of information. So they had to sensationalize. They had to go with what the parents were saying because the police weren't forthcoming with information. Not that they had any media integrity or that they had to check their sources. No, it was more of, we're going to sell papers. And if the police were more forthcoming, then we wouldn't have had to fill in the details. December 9th of 1994, fire ravages Satan house, retelling how a fire started in the basement of the house and climbed up the walls and burned down the building. There's also a small bit of the article, Blaze Stirs Bad Memories. It's all recapping what happened at the Satan house as far as how it was tied to kids playing Dungeons and Dragons and heavy metal music and string of suicides that they connected because the kids knew each other. We were in the midst of a satanic panic in Lethbridge and other places, spurned on by the media. This article does not take a critical view on it. It just goes along with rumor and opinion about what happened and that these kids were under satanic influence. In this article, say the exact address of the house, which is 1008 6th Avenue South. They made it really easy for people to stigmatize and isolate, focus in on this family and chase them out of the town. By this point, they had left, but the house was sold, a couple had bought it, and it just mysteriously burned down. June 23rd of 1995. Down it comes, and they take another opportunity to locate specifically where the Satan house was on 6th Avenue South, and they connect it to the string of teenage suicides. February 9th of 1998. It's a review back on the teenage suicides and what has changed from that period of time to now. There needs to be a focus on teenage depression rather than there being a focus on what was the panic at the time, because the first suicide was investigated properly, but then the string of suicides brought it into being investigated as a satanic panic. That teen depression needs more investigation and awareness, but it's written by a completely different person than wrote all the other previous articles in Lethbridge. This person has some distance. They're writing about it and they're from Sudbury, Ontario. March 1st of 2008, when they talk about chapter hosts a book signing for author with city ties. So this author, Redfern, talks about a novel about teenage suicide in Lethbridge, about a 14-year-old who was found mutilated at the Satan house as a work of fiction.